And thanks for joining us today. The purpose of our event this morning is to look at how the right balance of technology can increase your direct bookings. In other words, what mix-ec technology should you be considering for your hotel to help accelerate your business as we look ahead into 2021? So to help you on this journey, we've assembled some of the very best hotel tech companies in Europe to present to us this morning. In this regard, we have an excellent lineup of speakers representing the spectrum of the booking journey, each of whom is very knowledgeable in their respective area. So the format is that each speaker will have a maximum of 15 minutes, where 10 minutes is allocated to their presentation, and a further 5 minutes for 1 or 2 questions at the end of their presentation. If their presentation takes a little longer than planned, then we will skip their Q&A and move on to the next speaker. Rest assured, we will have plenty of time for a broad set of questions for the panel at the end of all presentations. So today is about sharing knowledge and experiences, and I would encourage you all to ask questions, as that's how we'll all learn from the presentations today. One thing for sure is I'm confident that you will learn at least one new thing from today's event, which will have made your time this morning all the more valuable. Before I introduce our first speaker, I'd like to have your attention for a few minutes to chat about what we're seeing happening at the moment. More specifically, the changes taking place in the hotel tech scene. And I think Accelerate is an apt title for today's event, in that there's quite a lot of change going on at the moment, which COVID has managed to speed up all the more. I guess it's fair to say that change is constant. However, what I find most striking is the pace of that change. The pace of change has certainly picked up. I can palpably feel how fast things are changing and that the rate of change is accelerating. The underlying and most significant factor that is driving the pace of this change is software and the computational power underpinning this software. Mark Andreessen, he's a serial investor in some of the most successful software companies. He famously quoted in 2011 that software is eating our lunch. And really what Mark means by that is that software and software companies will disrupt every aspect of what we would view as the traditional form of distribution and doing business. He went on to say that companies in every industry needs to assume that a software revolution is coming. This is particularly true for our industry today, in light of how COVID has impacted our lives and business. And as we all moved to work remotely earlier this year, we quickly realized that our businesses and lives could transition quite seamlessly to a home-based environment. We quickly got exposed to the power of cloud-based systems, as well as the breadth of technologies currently available. And many of these systems are there to help us automate the processes in our hotels, to help us run our businesses and help us run our business more efficiently. I guess the more we realize how well cloud-based systems integrate with each other, the more we realize how much they will benefit our business. An example of this could be the centralization of data, particularly the guest data, which we need for marketing and upsell purposes. So we could move this important piece of data away from traditional repositories like a PMS into a CRM system, for example. Certainly from Net Affinity's perspective, we're acutely aware of Andreessen's maxim and have continued to invest heavily in our systems and processes in the last 2 or 3 years. So for us, we're very much looking forward into 2021. And the reason why we called today's event Accelerate was to highlight how you can grow your direct business with the right balance of cloud-based. Marvin is one of the founders of Room Price Genie, and Marvin and his team are on the missions of bringing revenue management knowledge and technology to any hotel in the world, making managing prices simple, transparent, and highly efficient. So without further ado, I'll stop sharing, Marvin, and hand over to you.
Thank you very much. I hope you all can hear me.
All good.
And see my screen. Very nice to be here. I'm really excited. Thanks for the intro. And I actually want to start with a piece of wisdom from our office dog, Lewis. And when he's in front of his bowl of food, his motto is, it doesn't matter where you start, it matters that you start eating. That's what I want you to think today as well. So my goal for the next 10, 15 minutes is to make sure that you leave this event with a let's do it attitude. So no matter if it's about driving direct bookings, if it's about upselling, expanding your sales reach, marketing, or if it happens to be revenue management, my wish is that you leave this event and take on something new. I and all here on the panel, we know about the power of technology. It will save you time, it will help you improve your business, and it will help you make more money. So let's get started. Let's bring out this let's do it attitude. My first question is, why do you need a revenue management system? Maybe you say that you're too small, you have too few rooms, you do not have the staff to run proper revenue management operations. But let me tell you this, in the future, every hotel will adjust their prices according to supply and demand. And if you look around you, you see this everywhere already. You see it at the gas station. You see it when you buy food at the store, when you buy, hopefully again soon, airline tickets. And large hotels do it as well. And why does everyone do this having dynamic prices? It's because you can make more money by charging more when times are busy. And then you can drive occupancy by charging less when it's quiet. Let me actually give you an example of those two very lovely gentlemen you see on this slide, of the seaside apartment and the countryside boutique hotel. So the left one is the negative case scenario. It's someone who is emotionally driven, whose decisions are emotion driven. This is a hotel that reached out to us, and they did something over summer that many hotels did. They saw that bookings were not coming in. They reduced prices. Then when demand did come in eventually, they sold out very quickly to a price that was too low because they didn't have the time to put the rates up because they didn't check everything all the time. And they let emotions guide their way. They had the motto of, luckily I'm selling any rooms this year. It doesn't matter if it's at this low price. They ended up with an occupancy level roughly where last year's level was, but they made less money on each room. So their revenue decreased by 9%. And then you have a second example, the data-driven decision maker. We started working with this client in summer. We showed them how to handle the system in 2 one-hour sessions, and then they were ready to go. They were actually very skeptical in the beginning about using a revenue management solution because they have less than 20 rooms. They have no dedicated full-time revenue manager. So for them, pricing was one of the many jobs of the sales and marketing manager, but they had this let's do it attitude. What the system did, it analyzed the hotel experts around them. It looked at the hotels in the area, even the bigger and more expensive ones, to understand what's going on. What should we do with our prices? What the system does, it's trying to learn from the best. And then the system checks everything all the time and reacts to it. So as soon as booking demand came in summer, they actually started to increase the price. All their decisions were data-driven, and emotions were left out of the equation. So they actually outperformed last year's same time period by 12% in revenue. So we live in a world where still over 80% of properties do not use any kind of technology to determine their room rates. And they mainly think that it's maybe too complicated, that it's too expensive, maybe even too unusual, but that's wrong. So my first learning for you today is that there is a suitable revenue management solution for everyone. It does not have to be complicated, it does not have to be time consuming, and it does not have to be expensive. To sort of show you that a little bit more, the second learning for today is that revenue management is a journey. There are many different ways of managing your prices, and it is very far from a yes or no decision. So it's more, revenue management is more like a ladder with a lot of different stages. Today, I want you to think where you stand and then realize what the next step on this ladder could be for you. When you look at this slide, you see that the first two options that do nothings and the seasonal pricing, those are the ones on the very bottom. This is where you decide on prices once a year. You either have the same price all the time, still people do that, or you have a seasonal approach to pricing, charging a little bit more in summer than in winter, charging more on weekends than on weekdays. This is really the thing that takes the least time, but it also doesn't really make you any money. If you want to get to the next level, you need to put in some manual work to become a solo manual pricer. That's what we call it. And what you would do as a hotel, if you wanted to do a good job with pricing, you would look into your own occupancy to analyze this and to analyze your pickup. Then you would look into what everyone else is doing around you so you don't miss anything. And then you would clearly understand what days drive business the most this year. So maybe it's your Christmas period. Maybe it's summer holidays where you manage to achieve the highest prices. These are the days where you should constantly look at to make sure that you're selling at the right price. This is something hotels often do really manually with an Excel file. The next step is to use tools that help you with this analysis. I know that Siteminder is offering an insights tool, but then you have also other so-called rate shoppers or market insights tools that help you gather this data. This is great if you love to dive deep into things. So if you want to spend a lot of time on analyzing what's going on, this is awesome, but it's also really time consuming if you want to do a good job for the next 365 days. The next step, and this is away from the supported manual pricing, is when it comes to doing more. So the next step is finding someone or something that does the heavy lifting of data analysis for you. And this is where we come into play. So we focus on helping small to medium-sized hotels with getting their prices right. What we do is we analyze your market, we analyze your occupancy, we do this several times a day, and then we optimize your prices for the next 365 days into the future. It is really super simple. It only takes you a few minutes a week. It's super transparent, so you will always know where the prices are coming from, and it's super effective. Lastly, and this is something you should be aware of, there's also another segment of revenue management solutions, which is really for the experts out there. It's for the ones that have full-time revenue managers or revenue management teams that need to do in-detail analysis. If pricing is only one part of your job and you have other things on the table, these tools might be too much for you. So what I'm thinking of is, this is like buying a Ferrari when you're just trying to bring the kids to school. If you race cars, a Ferrari is great. But other than that, maybe a high-tech electric car is more efficient, and the money you save, you can invest in a nicer kitchen and in an electric lawnmower or whatever you fancy. So this is the journey of revenue management where you really have different options. Think about what is the logical next step for me. I said it in the beginning that my goal is to give you this let's do this attitude. And I have something for you that you can actually do now. It takes you 2 minutes, and what you will receive is an email that tells you where your prices are wrong. Fairly simple. So this is a product that we're just launching now in the next few days. And it's something that can show everyone the power of revenue management. We call it Genie Intelligence, and it's very simple. So it links up to your Booking.com account. Then it automatically analyzes what you do and what's going on around you. And then with the information that we have there, we send you an email every day where we're telling you where you're underpricing and what you should do in the next 14 days. So you can set up your own revenue management system with full pricing intelligence in just a few minutes. If you Google Genie as in Aladdin and intelligence, then you'll find it. There's a button, sign me up in 2 minutes. And yeah, you're getting started. So you can try it for free. It gives you cool insights. And it's for many of you, it will be the logical next step to understanding where will I go from here. I think we now have a 5-minute Q&A coming up. And if you don't have questions, then just try that. And you will have gotten some value out of this session today. And that's what it's all about. It's about getting you started. Thanks for your attention. I hope you feel energized and are now ready to do this.
Thanks, Marvin. I feel energized. Thank you.
Good.
I have a question. Your Genie Intelligence, it looks like a great product. And you're saying you do a lot of work, say, with small to medium-sized properties. I mean, properties at that level, I mean, are very conscious of price, in terms of costs of systems as such. And the biggest question on their mind will be, how does a revenue management system like yours make me more money?
It is very easy. It makes you more money by consistently doing the job. Everyone should be aware that the cost of a revenue management is really nothing compared to what it brings you. So just yesterday, I received an email from a client who said, guys, you're doing an insane job. I increased my year-over-year revenue for October by, it was something like 46%. So it was a ridiculous number. And that's because you now finally do the job. It's like not walking anymore, but getting in a car. And everyone will start to do that. So because you will do it and not everyone else will do it, you will significantly benefit from it. And ultimately, there will come the time where everyone has it.
Very good. Just another question as well, Marvin. The topic of flexible room pricing. This is still something quite new and unusual for guests. Does this create any challenges for a property, and how do you face them?
We get this a lot in the beginning, that people think, what are my guests going to say about flexible prices? What are they going to say if they say, last year I paid 75 for a room, now you want me to pay 82? Why? Did you change anything? That's in the minds of an hotelier. They oftentimes face this struggle that they think the client cares. Oftentimes the client doesn't care. The client is used to changing prices. If you have a car, you don't go to the gas station and say, last week I paid $1.50, now you want me to pay $1.75? No one does that. And that supply and demand drive the price is something that everyone is getting used to. And that's what we see here as well. So it's more in the face of the user of the hotel than in the face of the client that this is an issue.
Okay. That's brilliant. Thanks a million for that, Marvin. If you stop sharing, then we'll move on to Tony. If you're ready to go, Tony, I'll introduce Tony now, if that's okay. So Tony joined Siteminder in 2016 as they launched their second European office, which is based in Galway in the west of Ireland. So bringing a wealth of experience from the SaaS, I missed you there. Bringing a wealth of experience from the SaaS and customer service industries, Tony has led teams in Siteminder, helping hoteliers all across EMEA with a strong focus on new markets. As well as supporting the Irish market, Tony has helped Siteminder to grow their customer base in South Africa, the Baltics, Eastern Europe, and key tourist destinations on the Mediterranean, such as Italy, Greece, Cyprus, Turkey, and Croatia. With this variety in markets and travel trends, Tony brings to the panel great insights into the different distribution strategies. Tony, over to you.
Thanks, William. Thanks very much for everyone. It's great to get the opportunity to talk here with such a panel of really interesting softwares and interesting people as well. Just like a good introduction for myself there, but for those who may not be familiar with Siteminder, so we're, I think the list of kind of countries there would say like we're a global company, originally founded in Australia, but we have offices all over the world. And I mean, the key thing that we have is 34,000 customers across the globe. And even retaining that number during lockdown, we would have lost a couple of customers as unfortunately hotels went out of business, but we managed to retain a huge amount of customers and continue to help them to sustain their business. One of the key things that I want to really talk about today is getting into evolving your distribution strategy. So William already spoke about change and how there's so much change going on at the moment. And we have to be ready to evolve all the time as well. So we wanted to go through a few different kind of tips and tricks that we can go with it. But I sort of wanted to start off with a bit of a kind of a data point. So with Siteminder, we have a free tool on our website. It's not for customers, it's for anybody who wants to use it. You can just go onto our website, and it's called the World Hotel Index. And basically what we're doing, we're analyzing bookings and cancellations across multiple channels in multiple countries, and it just gives you good insight about what are the current trends at the moment. So we believe strongly in sharing information with colleagues, customers, prospects, whatever it's going to be, about what's going on in the travel industry, so that everyone can learn, and together we can sort of pull hospitality back up and running again. And using some of that information, we've managed to define what we call 5 stages of the hotel booking reset. Quite an interesting graph, and I'll talk through the different kind of stages. But sort of starting down at the bottom is probably where we're at in a lot of Europe at the moment. We're sort of flatlining down the very bottom. I think if we'd sort of started 2020 and have been told that hotels would be closed during the summer in Europe and things like that, nobody would have believed it. To have like a 0 occupancy at any point is unprecedented. But unfortunately, that was the situation. However, having gone through that wave through Europe, we're now back in it again. In other countries, we've gone through it and out of it, and we've learned this kind of trend. And the first thing that we saw that happens is domestic acceleration. So as soon, like, you know, everyone's been locked up at home, they're sick of being at home, sick of their families, whatever it's going to be, they want to spoil themselves. They feel we've endured this hardship, let's spoil ourselves, get a little bit of luxury. We can't do international travel, but what we can do is we can do some sort of leisure travel once the market's open, and we can go stay somewhere domestic and local. And the importance of having the right sort of visibility there is being on what are the top domestic channels for you, but also being ready for it as well. So these domestic travelers, they're booking with a level of uncertainty about, okay, lockdown is lifted, but what next? I better try and do this quickly in case we have to reset again. So they're booking with a short booking window, and they're booking local and nearby as well. The domestic acceleration runs for a while, and then it sort of peaks, and we get into that stage of plateauing, where domestic travel is steady. People are comfortable again in their local markets, traveling around in country, but not necessarily moving into the international stage. And that will stay static for a while. And then you'll have those less adventurous, perhaps the higher at risk groups who might start to risk a little bit more. Maybe they hadn't ventured out initially, they'll start dipping their toe in the water. And that's where we see like a state of flux, where people with uncertainty will create these peaks, and then other people might regress a little bit, and we'll have a bit of an up and down for a while. And those tests, the dipping the toe in the water, we become accustomed to it, and then yet this is the next new normal, and that new normal is embraced, and we move into the embracing stage where, okay, the hotels are used to what's happening, the guests are used to what's happening, and we're in that embracing stage. And then we're getting ready for what we all want to happen again, is the international acceleration. So when countries can open up, and we can then start looking at, well, where are international travelers coming from and how can we do that? Or as travelers ourselves, we can like, okay, I want a holiday. I'm in the west of Ireland and I've seen nothing but rain for the last month. I want to go somewhere warm and sunny, and whatever we can do to get away from that kind of space. And that's the international acceleration stage. Unfortunately, I've kind of glossed around those blue lines, which keep pushing us back to the very beginning again, which is the whole concept of the reset. The positives to take away from the very first lockdown, you know, from March through till June-ish, when markets began to recover, is that we did learn how quickly you guys as hotels can adapt to a situation, and how guests will behave in relation to it as well. And again, if you wanted to look at the World Hotel Index, you can see such spikes in early June, as soon as any kind of ease of restrictions began in countries, how people wanted to travel straight away. And so having all of those kind of stages pulling you back to reset again, it's bad, but at least we get some learnings from it. So we take, okay, so if we break it into stages, if you think about where am I at in this stage, plot yourself somewhere there, and then you can prepare for, well, what is the next stage and what do I need to be doing in order to get ready for that next stage? And even if there's a reset, you can go and you can review what were your previous actions at that stage. Were they good? Were they not good? And then you can plan again for, okay, once we get to that next stage, I can jump ahead again as well. And that's one of the really, really kind of key things that I wanted to get into, is how do you think about what stage you're at and how do you prepare yourself for it as well? So quite briefly, then I'm going to go through a couple of kind of top tips that I would recommend in relation to your distribution for this as well. And the first one is making sure you have a strong presence with your different channels and your OTAs. So I would hope that every kind of hotel here is working with at least Booking.com and Expedia as a channel. Some people see them as a little bit of an evil. We pay them huge amounts of commission, but they are, you know, they're the top 2 booking channels in the world for a reason, because they will bring you new guests, and they will continue to bring you guests, and they deliver hugely on that as well. For me, and I know Helena and William will agree, like the #1 channel you need to have is your direct booking channel. It is the most important. However, what I'm going to kind of talk through is how do we leverage your other channels in order to boost that booking channel a little bit more as well. And if you're a little known hotel, the first thing that you need to do is build an online presence. So it's all about being visible online. And if you can build a good presence with your OTAs, that works. So we all know we love long stay hotel guests coming and stay for 5 days. But as you're looking to build a presence online, if you have 5 independent stays over 5 nights versus 1 stay, think of the good shot of that. That's 5 independent reviews that you can potentially get, and that boosts your number of reviews that you have on the channel as well. And the more appealing you are to guests based on reviews, people are sheep. We want to follow what others are doing, and if other people are having a good time somewhere, we want to do the same as well. So build that kind of reputation. The other thing I would say about it is push out as much inventory as possible. So making sure you're pooling your inventory, because if you've just got, 5 rooms that you're thinking about opening a new channel and you want to put, 5 of your 40 rooms on that channel just to test it, you're not going to succeed, because they've got 5 rooms, someone else has 40 rooms. Those 40 rooms are going to sell much quicker. And then this channel that you're testing the water with, 5 rooms versus another hotel that they have that's in comparison, and they have 40 rooms, they're going to prioritize that as well. So if you're going to test something, test it properly. Give it as much rooms as possible, and then you're more likely to build the bookings coming from that as well. And that takes me nicely into my next point, where I wanted to talk about leveraging your OTAs against each other. So as a sales manager, I would encourage a little bit of competitiveness between my own sales team quite a bit as well, and get them to work harder by a little bit of competitiveness. And you can treat your channels as your virtual sales team and try to do the same with them as well. So think about it in this context. We know Booking.com and Expedia, the biggest channels in the world, they do a huge job. They do a great job. And there's other channels out there. There are hundreds and hundreds of channels out there, and they all do a different thing. They attract a different type of guest, a more specific demographic of who the guest is going to be, whether it's geography or spend threshold or however it's going to be. But even if those other channels are only bringing 5 or 10% of your bookings, what they're doing is they're eating into the big channel's lunch. So if we say, like, I'm Booking.com and I see that you have 40 rooms and you're listing your 40 rooms with me, and then you start to sell some rooms, but not through me. So you have 40 available, 38, 37, 36, 35. I see that there's a demand for the rooms that you're supplying, but I'm not getting any money for it. I want to earn that commission, so I'm going to do whatever I can to try and leverage your property so that I can start to get some of, capitalize on some of that demand that is there for your property. So you will see yourself rising in the OTA rankings as they get more competitive with each other. And if all goes well and you can continue that kind of battle, if you get to the point that your smaller OTAs are making Expedia and Booking fight a little bit more, the next thing that you'll hopefully be able to see is those 2 big OTAs are then fighting to list you on meta search sites. And through all of this, like, as an independent hotel, it's very difficult to compete against the budgets that are there for marketing for the likes of Booking and Expedia when it comes to meta. But if we're looking at those 2, they have billions in their marketing budget. They can do it, no problem. And if they see there's a demand for your hotel and they want to try and capitalize on it, they'll do that. They'll list you on Booking or on the meta search sites, and you'll see yourself being there listed, and you're not paying any extra for it. It's all part of what you're paying for your OTAs anyway. It's coming out of your standard commission, but they're fighting harder to get those sales for you as well. So you're going from being on 1 or 2 channels to now being on Meta, having a good direct booking engine that's creating your own visibility, and it's just driving more and more visibility online for yourself as well. So push them to compete a little bit. And then the last kind of point that I wanted to go into is sort of coming back to that point of your most important channel needs to be your direct booking channel. And there's lots of different reasons for it as well, but using your other channels to capitalize on that is key. So it's an old phrase that's been thrown out a lot, but the billboard effect is very much still alive and kicking. For those who aren't familiar with it, it speaks of the concept of, I'm a guest, I'm a traveler, I'm doing a bit of research, I'm on an OTA. Before I want to make that booking, I'm going to do a little bit of research on the hotel's own website. And as I do that research, that's where having a good website and a good booking engine like Net Affinity that captures my attention, gives me the promos that I want, I can potentially make the booking there without returning to the OTA. So that's using your channels as a marketing tool to drive traffic to your own website and getting good success out of that. So think of the more visibility you have on your different channels, it's creating more channels, people will do more research. But if we look at the environment that we're in at the moment, how important is it for everybody to be able to do more research? Like the first thing that most travelers want to do is they want to go and have a look at what's the COVID policy in that property? How safe am I going to be? What do I need to do to be prepared to get there as well? And that's not available on the OTAs. That's going to be the first thing that they do on a website. So even if they're finding you on an OTA or another channel, they're more than likely going to end up on your website at some point as well. And that's, I mean, the billboard effect is probably, you'll get different sort of numbers quoted all the time. I mean, I think a minimum of 50% of bookers will visit your website before making a booking, probably higher in this day and age as well. So that's my last little sort of tip on it as well. So think about using your channels in order to drive more direct bookings as well. Just use it as a marketing tool. And that's kind of it for me.
Well done, Tony. Thanks a million for that.
Right.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
Have you noticed any change in performance in the types of channel travelers have been using since COVID?
So yeah, good question. There is lots of different sort of change going on. I think it's less about the change in performance of the channels. It's more the change of the behavior in who's sort of booking as well. So I think now in how we're traveling, people are a lot more interested in self-stays or, and the default for most people to go to for a kind of a self-accommodation stay would be the likes of Airbnb, which would obviously have gone up quite a lot as well. Now I know not a lot of people know that Airbnb is in the hotel market as well. So it's worth checking out as a potential channel because again, it's people will go somewhere that they feel they want to research a particular thing, but if they're seeing something else there, think of the impulse buy. If you're there and if you're visible and you have the right kind of package, you can be seen on the same sense as well. Probably longer stays as well. I mean, I think you're finding that there's probably there's less, people aren't willing to take the risk for a 1 or 2 night kind of stay. You'd see length of stay will be increasing quite a bit as well. It stays the same with your big channels booking, and Expedia still leading the way. And then obviously for all the different kind of markets that are out there is look at what's unique and for your domestic kind of bookings as well. So domestic is obviously key and really, really interesting. I noticed for Ireland as well, the increase in bookings through direct booking engines is huge once we open up the market as well, because people are booking domestic and local. So therefore they're familiar with what they're booking and they're going straight to, they Google the name of the hotel they want to go to and they land there first of all.
That's brilliant. I have another question, Tony, if we have time for it. So Siteminder, you're in a broad range of markets. I'm just wondering, is there any tips or trends that you're seeing happening in any markets that might be relevant, say, to the Irish UK market?
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if we look at going back to the graph of the 5 stages of the hotel reset, to recap on what I was saying about be ready and always sort of be prepared about what's sort of happening as well. So I'm really interested, I don't know if other people are noticing it, but I'm really interested to see that I'm getting quite a lot of marketing materials from Irish hotels now. So we're still in full lockdown, but I'm starting to get invites about making bookings. And I think that's great. That's hotels who are taking advantage of the situation at the moment, knowing that from last time, and it's the same in other markets that we're in, there is such a spike in travel as soon as it opens up. Like, I mean, there's no time for waiting for it to open up and then get ready, because you're already too late. So it's about preparing, and even to the example that Marvin was talking about, the seaside apartments as well, that sort of rang true with me, that they weren't ready. They waited until it was too late to try and adjust, and they just want to take any bookings that they can get. But I mean, the key thing is the successful properties are the ones that have tried to get ahead of the game and have started doing stuff a little bit ahead of where they're at as well.
Yeah, good point. That's brilliant, Tony. Thanks a million for that.
All right, thank you.
Helena, if you want to get ready, you're up next. So our next speaker is Helena. Helena joined Netaffinity. Actually, I can't remember the year when you joined. It's about 4 or 5 years. But
I'm on my 6th anniversary next week.
Thank you for reminding me. So Alina has quickly progressed to become e-commerce team lead at Net Affinity and overseeing the commercial relationship between ourselves and our clients. I guess for Helena, she's passionate about revenue management and loves immersing herself in data analysis, really just to get behind the numbers to understand what they're telling us. So Helena, over to you.
Great, thank you very much, William. So hello, everybody. As said, I'm Helena. I'm team lead, e-commerce team lead here at Net Affinity. And today I want to chat through some Book Direct initiatives and strategies that you can put in place with your property. So firstly, just a quick overview of why Book Direct is important and still so important. Number one, it's cheaper for your hotel. And as Tony alluded to as well, your own direct channel needs to be the most important one in your property. So as we all know, OTAs charge between 15 and 20% commission for each booking. And so our goal is including your marketing budget to aim to achieve the bookings below your main OTA commission. So that difference goes straight to your bottom line. Our goal isn't to remove all bookings coming through the OTAs. So as Tony went through, there is a place for them within your distribution strategy, but we need to make sure that it's striking a balance in favor of what's best for your property. So cancellation rates through OTAs are astronomical. We've seen properties with cancellation rates vary between 35 and 50% from booking.com. This means essentially you have to resell every other booking that you're getting through booking.com, as it will wash out. Our average in 2019 for Net Affinity clients, pre-COVID, obviously it's changed this year, was at 12% cancellations. Your OTAs encourage bookers to book a few hotels, rebook a cheaper hotel closer to the date of arrival, whereas your direct guests have bought into your brand and are less likely to cancel their booking. Adding to that, with the COVID-19 pandemic, properties have reported to us a noticeable drop in bookings coming through the OTAs and moving direct. And this is partly because of the reassurance bookers are looking for in regards to what will happen if they need to cancel a booking. So to cut out the middleman if this needs to happen. We need to ensure we're making the most of this silver lining in the Book Direct story. And then in addition, as Tony alluded to as well, we've seen that guests are looking for information, hygiene and safety practices, and your own site is the best place to highlight this to your guests, so encouraging them to keep, when they're on the site, to complete that booking on the site. It's much easier to convince a guest to return to your property when you have that direct relationship with them, with your brand, and they're not an OTA's customer. We're all aware of how little information we get on a booking.com booking, for example, and their priority is to encourage the booker to book again on their site, not necessarily for your property. It doesn't really matter to them where the commission is coming from. So from analysis I've done for individual properties, comparing brand.com performance to OTA's performance, I've seen repeatedly that bookers on brand.com are more likely to opt for the higher value room types. That's partly because they're only available direct, but also if you look at, I've seen a higher percentage of bookings coming through on OTAs for the room only rate for the same property direct that's on the bed and breakfast rate. And this is even without a pricing initiative. So as the OTA booker is likely to look at the rate and picking the lowest one that they see. So with the option of adding enhancements for breakfast, dinner, spa, flowers, etc. on the booking direct as well, this is another driver of revenue. And then also, anecdotally, from talking to properties and from what I've seen in my own experience as a revenue manager, we've seen that guests who book directly are more likely to spend more money when they're on property as well. That's obviously a benefit. So why should the guest book direct? We need to kind of turn our thinking and think about what the guest is thinking and why should they pick your property over booking.com when they're actually making the booking. And we need to give them a valid reason to do so. The tide is turning and guests are happier to check brand.com and they're checking for the health information as well and they don't always assume now that the better deal is on booking.com as they would have 5, 6, 7 years ago. They will check that on the website. So we need to make the most out of that. It could be as simple as making the rate slightly more expensive on the OTAs, messaging this as saving when you book direct, which we do with a lot of our clients. Look at offering room only on booking.com for the same price as bed and breakfast on your own site. So that you basically are offering your guests a complimentary breakfast, and we all love a good hotel breakfast. Or offer your guests a €20 spa or dining credit if they book direct. Selling your standard rooms only on the OTA so that your guest has a better choice when they're on your own site for superior family, etc. rooms. Act like the OTAs and don't be afraid to highlight your flexibility and cancellation policies. Now more than ever with COVID-19, we need to make sure that that's very, very clear. And hotels are getting much, much better at that now as well. Like the OTAs, we need to ensure that the booking process is quick and easy to get through for the booker. So we will work with our clients making recommendations on best practices on using our system for the different settings on our system, but ones that work for your property's needs with the best conversion rates in mind. So that's very, very important. And then key to any campaign, any book direct campaign that you have, is ensuring a clear, consistent messaging across all your platforms. Your website and booking process, especially clear on mobile, as this is what's seeing most traffic now. All your digital marketing campaigns and all touch points with your guest. That is from email marketing through to phone calls. No matter how they're communicating with you, the same message needs to be there to encourage the direct booking. So speaking of digital marketing campaign, the old adage is still true. You need to speculate to accumulate. You need to spend money to make money back. With the highly competitive digital marketing landscape, more so in 2020 than ever before, you need to ensure that your message is out there in front of your prospective guests. Google, Facebook, etc. are making it more difficult to reach your potential guests organically. The first step is protecting your own brand. The OTAs and meta search providers like TripAdvisor and Trivago are all spending money in your brand name search terms, so that they're appearing before you on your own website for guests looking for your brand specifically. You need to ensure that you're up there with them and not missing out. Across your digital marketing campaigns, you need to ensure that you have sufficient budget to make a real dent in the market. Small budgets won't cut it anymore as the landscape gets more and more competitive. Focusrite has published stats for Booking.com spending $5 billion and Expedia spending $6 billion across all their campaigns, digital marketing campaigns last year in 2019. And that for Expedia is up 6% on on 2018. So why we can't compare an individual's property budget with that? Even with their massive economies of scale, it shows that they're upping their game to stay on top of their campaigns and their budgets. Meta search has become a vital platform for all properties, especially when you're offering that price differential. It's an easy place to highlight this to your potential bookers before they get very far into the booking process. Like for Google, it's on the search results. Google Hotel Ads remains the platform where we're seeing the best return on investment for meta search, as they continue to improve the usability and functionality, and the guests are getting used to seeing these results on the search results page. Make use of display and remarketing campaigns. That's not just on Google Ads, but also through Facebook and Instagram. And the real winner that we've seen over the past couple of years has been YouTube bumper ads. These are a really, really cost-effective way to get your brand in front of users on YouTube with a 6-second unskippable video. We can use targeting to show specific offers to repeat guests, specific demographics and geographics to make use of your budget and optimize conversions. And as mentioned in my last slide, and this is how important it is, ensure your messaging is very consistent across the board. All ads have the same wording and imagery, and do rate checks to ensure your strategy is appearing correctly on the meta search. So OTAs are appearing cheaper unbeknownst to yourself, especially on the more dodgy sites. And this can undermine your whole campaign. And finally, there are factors to consider on site at your property when implementing a book direct strategy, so it doesn't fall down at the last hurdle. All your departments need to have bought into the strategy, and that's from the top right down. Obviously, the general manager must have okayed the strategy, but also your reception and res agents, so that if questioned by a guest, they know what to answer. You've armed them with this information, and they have an understanding how to convert that booking then and there, and not let the guest hang up and go to Booking.com. In tandem with this, silos between sales and marketing and the revenue teams are kryptonite to any book direct strategy. But where it does happen when the two teams have opposing goals and don't communicate, it undoes everyone's hard work and achieves negative results. Ensure that your team members all have a good basic understanding of why you're doing this and revenue management in general. Take, for example, your res and reception teams. Make sure they understand the importance of completing all your fields on the reservation, the PMS correctly, so they know what to mark for your source, your channel field, and aren't just selecting the first option. So when your revenue manager pulls this information and goes to analyze it, they know it's accurate. And operations can't be forgotten either. Think about your online reviews, and Tony mentioned this as well. It's much easier to sell a property that's rated 4 out of 5 stars than it is 3 out of 5 stars, or 3.5 out of 5 stars to a new guest. So, and that as well encourages repeat stays. So ensuring your ops teams get this feedback from your online reviews and implement improvements for regular complaints as to avoid them going forward. It's important to respond to your reviews of course online, but this can't just be a lip service, or it will show on your review platforms over time. Maybe have a book direct day or week at your property, COVID safe of course, providing trainings to all teams so that they know what part they can play in the overall strategy. That's it. I hope you've been able to take 1 or 2 points additional from my presentation today. And if you're a Netfinity client, please do reach out to your account contact for further advice on any of these points if you have questions on how we can implement them with your website and your property and your marketing strategy. Thank you.
Thanks a million, Helena. Well done. I have a couple of questions for you if you have time for it. Yeah. I mean, COVID this year has certainly been a challenging year because of COVID. I'm just wondering, despite that, let's say some properties have done quite well, and what additional marketing campaigns would you recommend that have worked well this year for some properties?
So I've mentioned the YouTube bumper ads, which we do have a lot of properties using. Instagram stories continue to work really, really well, and we manage those in tandem with your Facebook campaigns, especially if you've great imagery. That's what works really, really well on Instagram. And then also Google have launched new discovery ads. These are on YouTube and they appear kind of below the video or in the feed of videos. They look like a video thumbnail, but they're actually just like a display ad. We've seen really, really strong engagement with these and conversion rates at, again, an efficient cost. So YouTube is a really great platform to leverage. We've enabled these for current clients if you have the qualifying display campaigns, but if you do have questions on it, please let us know.
Very good. And another question as well, just in terms of your mobile site, I mean, how important is that from a book direct strategy perspective?
It's vital. We look at our device trends, global stats once a quarter. So for quarter 3 this year, ending in September, we've seen now that 75% of traffic for all of our sites averaged out is coming through mobile. Up until now, it was about 66%. So it's grown again with COVID. And that's 59% of all transactions. So basically 3/4 of your views on your site are through your mobile. This makes your mobile site, how it views on mobile, more important than your desktop version. So with Google's mobile first indexing that they've launched and they've rolled out in the last 18 months or so, you need to make sure your site is up to scratch for their requirements, and they've more changes coming next year. We have our website builder option, which if you haven't updated your sites in a few years, or you're kind of time pressed, or budgets are an issue, it's a great option to make sure your site is up to scratch on mobile. And the way we have it built with the CMS platform in the background, it's a site that doesn't go out of date, that we can make these updates that are required in the background without you having to rebuild or relook at your site on a very regular basis. So it's a great option to make sure you're on top of it from a mobile perspective. And one thing I say, if you've been my client over the last few years, you'll have heard me say, take out your phone and check how things look. When you set up a new rate plan, when you set up a new page, take out your mobile and look at it. That's absolutely vital.
Yeah, very good point too. Thanks a million, Helena, appreciate it. Our next speaker today is Will Howes from Revinate. Will is a senior regional manager at Revinate. Originally from the UK, Will has been living in the Netherlands for the past 7 years. On top of his work in terms of helping hoteliers utilize their data to drive revenue and advising on Revinate's hospitality CRM platform, he's also just become a dad, which he assures us is no mean feat whilst working from home. So, Will, if you're ready, if you want to take over.
Thanks, William. Yeah, 1 sec.
No problem.
Okay, yeah, thanks, William. Yeah, so I'm going to take you through Revinate and the guest data platform. Talk a little bit about how using your data, clean data, merged data, unified data powers the guest journey and ultimately revenue. And I think to help with this next 10 minutes, this presentation, I think it's really important to take a step back and actually look at what do I mean by data when I say data? Because everybody's saying data, data, data. What do I actually mean? Well, guest data is primarily built around the email address first, Let's not forget, email is still the most widely used North Star when it comes to a guest. There's nearly 4 billion email addresses used globally, and I think in a couple of years there'll be 4.5 billion or something like that. So and you need an email to open a bank account. You need email to book flights, cars, of course, hotels as well. So the key thing really is building from there that guest view. So building the data on top of this email address. What else can you have as data? When I say data, it's also name, it's location, where they're from, which city, which country. If you're a group of hotels, which other hotels have they stayed in? What did they buy in that hotel? What were their preferences before they arrived? Did you upgrade them? Did you upsell them? If so, what did you upsell them with? Booking channels and all that kind of spend. That's what I mean when I say data in the next 10 minutes. And where do you collect data? Of course, bookings, the confirmation email, but there's also other ways. So there's also sign-up forms on your website, events that you might go to. You meet a bunch of people, you have some corporate data. Asking the guest is probably the oldest method. There is also the digital version of that as well. So reaching out to the guest and saying, hey, why are you coming to our hotel? Tell us a bit about yourself. So that's collecting data, building data, and what's the problem? So right now, the problem in most hotels, we say about 80 to 90% of hotels have a data problem. And what is that? Well, that's basically they have bad data. It's not clean, it's inaccurate. There's spelling mistakes. There's Gmail with 2 L's for gmail.com. You've got a bunch of OTA data in there that you can no longer reach. There's first name, last names, siloed data on Excel sheets, and the marketing team has one set of data, the sales team has a different set of data. So that's a data problem. Most hotels have this. Why hasn't it been fixed? Well, the technology for handling hotel data is really only now catching up with demand. Okay, so that's the backdrop to the next 10 minutes. And hotels, they sit on a gold mine of data, huge amounts of data, whether it's in your PMS mostly, or if it's in other areas as well, your POS system, from your website, you might have these Excel sheets. And it's absolutely critical that you unify all of this data. So the way we do it at Revinate is we put all the data unified through our data engine. So we use machine learning to clean the data, to merge the data. And then you have a guest profile. So for every guest, you have a single view. And with that guest view, you can then, you can then speak to them on a more personal level when they arrive at the hotel, so they leave you better reviews. You can manage that through Revinate. You can also, of course, let's say operations teams, they can use this data. They know who's arriving, when they're arriving, what their preferences are, what their upsells are. Reception team is going to use this data. The marketing team, of course, if they know which channels or which preferences or which segments you want to segment this data. The revenue team is going to use this data, and so on. In fact, often we get the general managers of hotels using this view because it gives them a better picture of their VIPs. So very often a general manager will get this report sent through in the morning. They'll see this view of the guest, and they can go and have a fantastic conversation with the VIP guest on arrival, really drive home that personalized experience. And that really comes, so that's really the crux of this presentation, and the key thing. It's how does knowing your guest drive revenue? So the first sort of few slides I've been through is really how do you clean your data? How do you get better data? But then what do you actually do with that data? Well, you need to communicate to your guests. I think Tony mentioned a second ago that the best hotels right now during COVID are the ones communicating to their guests. And there are tons of communication coming out from Ireland that I've seen, which is saying, hey, either I'm reopening, but I need new audiences, or I'm not reopening until 2021. That's kind of the three buckets. So use this data, use this information about your guests and communicate to them in a personalized way. So let's take this one example, Jessica Yu. So because of all the, this data pulled into the profile, you're able to sort of go into the system, segment based on this, and then actually target her with the campaigns that you want to target. So let's take an example. The first one is a birthday example. So you know when her birthday is. Very importantly, you need to firstly collect the birthday data. If you don't collect the birthday data, you can't send birthday campaigns. That's a side note. So with the birthday data, you can then start running an automated happy birthday campaign. The more advanced CRM companies using CRM out there, not just in the hotel industry is actually not very good at CRM. It's probably about, I'd say, 5 or 10 years behind most industries like airline industries and finance industries and fashion industries. They're fantastic at CRM, and what they do very often, if you subscribe to their mailing list, is that you will receive things like, hey, you know, William, happy birthday. You know, it's been 6 months since you booked a flight with us. Here's a direct code. I would love to have you fly with us again. And that kind of automation and personalization is really the future of where hotels are going. They're kind of copying these other industries that have already been doing it. On top of that, you've got things like preferences, family friendly. So, hey, let's target our family friendly guests with Pack Up the Kids and Visit campaign. Right now you've got COVID everywhere. So you're probably thinking, right, let's draw a circle around the hotel of 50 kilometers, 50 miles, and target everyone within that circle for a local staycation. Maybe go further and segment guests who've stayed 2 or more times, so VIP locals. On top of that, you've got things like their survey responses, you know, reviews that they've left on TripAdvisor or Google, you know, pulling that into their profile as well. And hey, you know, how often do you leave a review and you go back and stay at the hotel and they have no idea who you are? And that's kind of annoying. So get past that. Make sure you recognize these guests. Even if it's a negative review, you can then say, hey, you know, Jessica, we see that you didn't have a good time last time you stayed with us. You know, we've changed the housekeeping staff, so everything should be fine this time. If there's a problem, here's my number, and let us know. And lastly, and I would say probably most importantly in this particular slide, is preferred booking channel, OTAs, something that comes up time and time again. I think all presenters before me have touched on this. So OTAs bring new guests, and that's a great thing. But once they're in your hotel, it's so important. It's critical. It's to a sustainable business model that you capture their information and their data, and that you continue to communicate to them, and you get them back in the hotel as a direct guest. That's how you break the cycle of OTA dependency. So OTAs have the place, but don't get stuck in OTA dependency. Capture the guest data and get them back in the hotel. Yeah, and I just wanted to also highlight today the importance of segmentation. People often miss the importance of segmentation. So we've got 2 examples here, scenario 1 and scenario 2. Scenario 1, the hotel sends the same email to 50,000 people. They're so happy they've got a database of 50,000 people. They send out 1 email, but they only get 35 reservations. Hotel 2, on the other hand, they segment their data, 50,000 people, into 10 different groups. And then what they see is a higher conversion rate because it's more personalized, it's more tailored, it's more relevant to what the guest needs, and they get 185 reservations. The numbers speak for itself. It's really, really important of segmenting data and communicating to guests in that way. And so while we're looking at going down the route of segmentation, there are so many touch points in the guest journey, and it's not about blasting your database with like 20 different emails to all your people, blah, blah, blah. It's about carefully creating a journey that your guests go on, a digital guest journey that is personalized, but importantly automated. and segmented. Many different touch points, whether it's, you know, inspiring guests to come back into the hotel, which is where we're at right now with COVID, whether it's pre-arrival and saying, hey, you know, you're coming, we say sort of 7 days or 3 days before the arrival, you want to start upselling them, sort of 6 upsells in a page, get that into the profile, on property, speak to your guests, and post-stay critically OTA win back. William, how am I doing for time? I didn't keep an eye on the time. Oh, you're on mute there. I think I got a couple of minutes. So,
sorry, 3 minutes. Well,
perfect. Yeah. So I think I'm going to sort of finish a little bit early, but I think the key thing really is starting. You know, you do have a starting point. The starting point is your data. It's so critical to clean the data, merge the data together, unify it from all your different silos, from all your different places, see who your guests are, and then create this automated journey and keep a sort of sustainable growth model where you are getting OTA bookings in, but you're also capturing their data and you're keeping them in this life cycle, your own life cycle, because you own that life cycle. If they're not in your life cycle, then you don't really own the guest. Any questions based on that?
Yeah, I have it. Well done, Will. That was really, really interesting. Thanks a million. I really like the rich guest profiles. I'm just wondering, how much manual work is involved in putting all of these together?
That's a good question, and it's often a misconception. If I jump back into the slide to show you this rich guest profile, there's actually not a lot of manual work that's gone in here. It's all automated. So because of the integration into the PMS, you've got an integration into POS, all your different data points have come into here, and they've created this guest profile. Obviously, you might have Excel sheets that you need to manually upload. That's about the only manual work you'd need to do. Maybe on arrival, if the guest says, hey, can you change my email address? Can you change my subscription status or add some notes? That's also possible within the profile as well. But on the whole, it's an automated process.
Very good. And my favorite topic, how could we use a guest data platform like this to lower dependence on the OTAs?
Good question. Okay, yeah. I think it's everyone's favorite topic. And I think last time I was on Net Affinity's podcast, it came up as well. Yeah. I worked for an OTA for 4 or 5 years in the Netherlands here, not Booking.com, even though that's based here, but a different one. So I've seen both sides of the coin when it comes to OTAs. And yeah, OTAs have their place. They are doing their best to bring in guests because they want to sell rooms. They don't really care which guests come to you, do they? They just want to send you guests. So it's really up to the hotel to break the cycle of depending on an OTA. And what do we mean by depending on an OTA? We mean that the OTA owns the guest data. They own the guest. And with that, they will continue to keep them in their loyalty program, on their cycle, and in their database, and get them going back into other hotels or back into your hotel via the OTA. So the secret to breaking this is capturing the guest email address. It's as simple as that. So you either do it before they arrive or on property. And if you don't do it by then, you only have 30 days with Booking.com after the guest checks out and 17 days with Expedia after the guest checks out to continue to communicate to the guest. After which that email goes dead and you can no longer communicate to the guest. So it's critical within that time frame that you capture their email address, you get your whole staff trained up and in the know-how of why it's important. You put it into your automated process as well of capturing data, and then slowly what you see is a shift to direct.
That's brilliant. Well done, Will. Thanks a million for that answer.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. So our next speaker is Mattia Zanella, and Mattia is an Italian. He's passionate about travel and also living in Amsterdam. He's sales manager at Oaky and joined the company 3 years ago and has helped grow the company from 300 hotels to 2,000 hotels. So Mattia looks after the UK and Irish market, where he is helping hotels increase revenue via upselling. So Mattia, over to you.
Thank you, William. And a very good bridge from Will. Clean data help you do a lot of things, and one of them is definitely upselling. Thanks for the invitation. Very happy to be here. And I think the topic of upselling is very important today, mostly for 3 points that I'd like to start with. The first is that we have seen in 2020 lower occupancy overall in all the countries. And when we have lower occupancy, then it's very important to do upselling, because we want to increase the guest spend, make sure they spend a bit more money during their stay. A second very important topic is we've been forced in our hotels to implement contactless policies. So all the upsell we were able to do eventually at the front desk or during the stay, maybe it got a bit less powerful. So how do we find a way to still speaking to our guests and maximize their spend? That's a big question mark from this year, I would say. And finally, today more than ever, guests are really traveling to enjoy and have a good time, right? We had a tough year, all of us. So if we find a way to surprise them, it can be via an email campaign, as Will was saying, but also if we find a way to show to them something relevant and show them we're taking care of their experience, then it's very nice, and they will definitely enjoy what you've prepared for them. So with these things in mind, I'd like to start talking about upselling from where we come from. A lot of hotels really have a very manual approach to it. Often it's a back and forth via emailing or phone, which is very good for personalization, because we manage to offer the right things to the right guest, but very bad in terms of efficiency. It takes a lot of time. It's a process. Sometimes you don't write down the right notes, etc., etc. So the ideal scenario, if you think about it, it will be eventually finding a way which is a bit more digital and contactless to drive the same personalization, show to the guests only what is relevant according to their profile, and eventually automate this with your PMS and make sure that the data come back to your system. And ultimately, the guest that is going to spend more money is also going to enjoy very much the upsell experience. So this is a sneak peek of how a property in York, for example, is doing it. You see some of their offers displayed on a responsive landing page where they can customize what they want with a few clicks, and they can make their stay the way basically they desire. But I think the learnings of today, and you've seen it in the title of my presentation, New Sources of Revenue, is really about what can we do today to find new revenue centers in our properties. Because I'm sure a lot of hotels today are definitely doing a great job at eventually F&B, transportation, hotel services, as you can see in this chart, where there are the data from 2020 of all our customer base. The late checkout, the breakfast, the transfer to the airport. These are things that everybody's doing. But my attention today and what I want you to think about is really these other and activities, which combined together make more than 10%. So this means that of all your upselling revenue that you're doing, you can eventually add a 10% if you come up with something a bit out of the box, we call it. So to make it very concrete, I brought to you a few examples that you can see in the screen now. And it's really a combination of what is available at the property, what is relevant for your guest, profitable for you, and also something that you can deliver operationally, because you don't want to get your team to struggle afterwards. So revenue marketing get together when started to use an upselling platform, and you see examples here as running a class that can be something related to sport, but can be also something related to cooking. There's a small hotel next to London whose barman basically wrote a book about cocktails, and they sold 200 copies this year. And that was a good revenue source they never thought about before. Funny example from Durham, not far from Newcastle. This is a castle basically, and they converted one of their rooms in an escape experience. And that became something available for the guests as well as for the public. And they're driving a lot of revenue that way. Another cool that I always like to mention, because we travel a lot in our jobs, and it's nice to end up in a property that eventually has a recovery for you after a long flight. That would be very cool to see more often. And a cute deal on the bottom right coming from Hard Rock Maldives. It's an upscale, very nice property. They basically prepare the setting and the stage for you so that you can propose to your girlfriend to get married. So totally crazy ideas, but who said this cannot be part of your upselling strategy? I'm not saying everything is applicable, of course, but I'm pretty sure that if we look at your properties, we could find a few examples that make the guests smile and also have a good time and spend a bit more money ultimately. So concrete example coming from the Benelux, September this year, this hotel, thanks to Staycation, managed to have a decent amount of reservation. It was really impressive to us, and we wrote a case study that you can find on our webpage, that 1/3 of the reservation basically booked a reserve a table deal, which is also having a 0 as a price. We call it freemium price. So you don't see right away the revenue that you generate, but you drive a lot of conversion and ultimately bookings to your restaurant, which is what this property and this GM was interested about. And if you think about the average price per reservation of that restaurant, then you also understand how impactful such an offer can be. But talking a lot about services, I'm sure a lot of you are asking, okay, services is great, but during COVID, we had our spa closed or our restaurant had to be closed. So as a revenue manager, maybe some of you care much more about rooms because there's a higher margin in terms of revenue that can be generated. And what has been our learning this year here at Oaky is that historically hotels has been selling the rooms organized in categories. So you have your standard, economy, then you have your superior, deluxe, junior suite, and so on and so forth. But what if there would be a revenue opportunity not based in categories, but based on attributes that you find inside the categories? I know it's something revenue management systems are starting to talk about. It's something that a lot of companies are starting to think of, for the future, and something we have been able to put into place. And I really encourage you all to do an exercise of thinking, what can I use to eventually remunerate and monetize more my rooms? Some examples coming from our customers, and we're also learning on this topic nowadays. Selling the rooms based on the view, that was a very simple one. Rooms according to the proximity to maybe the elevator, that was very new this year. I don't know, the size of the room, the type of amenities inside, and finally something I learned last month, there was a hotel selling a surprise room upgrade. So the guest doesn't know exactly what he's gonna get. He's gonna definitely enjoy the surprise. And this gives a lot of freedom at the front office team to actually assign to the guest the rooms that is available and it's more convenient for you to assign. Of course, we always need to create the right expectation. So according to what I'm gonna deliver, then I need to identify the right price for that attribute. But who said you cannot do that, right? So that's something really, really interesting that I hope you will be able to implement. So looking a bit at upselling and closing it up, I would say that a big learning for us this year, and maybe for you today, is that try to use creativity to put into place new services, packages, and experiences that you haven't sold before. Make sure they're relevant for the guest and drive the right personalization towards them. And the second one is try to use attributes in your room. If you have really no idea what could be an attribute, go to your front office manager and ask them which one of the rooms they will spend their night on, because even if you have all superior rooms, all in one category, I'm sure they will pick one or two, and there must be a reason behind it, right? And nothing, with this in mind, I'm gonna show you one last slide, because a lot of questions I receive after presentation is, okay, Mattia, but how much money can I make? So I filter in our Tableau software, which is a data visualization tool we use in Oaky, all our hotels in Ireland and UK. And on the left, you see the average basket. So basically, depending if you are a 3, 4, or 5-star hotel, you see how much extra every guest is going to spend when they convert inside an upselling platform. And what is also very interesting is the revenue per room. Just looking at the last maybe 3 months, August, September, October, you see how much incremental revenue per room such a technology can help you drive. Now, upselling comes together with, different touch points. So you have the one at the booking engine in the webpage, you have your front office team doing a great job there. We're never going to replace that. But if you can combine it with automation and personalization, you can literally drive before 40 and 60 pounds per room per month on top of what you're already making. And that's a great news, especially when your occupancy is a bit lower and when you're looking at reopening, hopefully as soon as possible. So I hope you got a few learnings out of this. If you have any question later on, happy to take them. Back to you, William.
Yeah, thanks a million, Matteo. Well done. That was brilliant. Thank you very much. I have a couple of questions for you. I'm just wondering, how many offers should hotels include in their upsell?
Yeah, that's a question we receive often by all the customers that are in the onboarding phase. And what we say is for services between 8 and 12, and for rooms we say between 3 and 6. So the ideal number for rooms seems to be 5. Now, I would say also that you can have active 25, 30 offers. We have a property selling, 50 treatments, for example, in their spa. But if you use personalization, then you make sure that the couple sees just an X amount of them, your family sees some of them, your business guest sees some of them, right? Because you don't want to offer a romantic package to a business guest staying for a day at your property, or a family package to a couple, and so on and so forth. So these are more or less the numbers you should look at.
Okay. And the best time then to offer these deals and room upgrades and so forth?
It depends a lot, I would say, on the booking window of the property. So if you are maybe a vacational, property in the coast, maybe you have a longer booking window. If you're in the city, it could be very, very short. Nowadays, it got short for everyone, apparently. But what I would say is definitely the pre-stay, because it's when the guest is very excited about their arrival and maybe they haven't figured it out where they want to go to eat or where to park their car. These are last minute moments that you just look in Google and TripAdvisor how to solve them. And if you as a hotel can get these solutions to the guest first, I'm sure they will remember that. And that's also an activity for, branding, loyalty, things that the rest of the panelists have been talking about. So I would say between 15 and 3 days before arrival, depending on the booking window. We have a lot of data about what time of the day you should be talking to a business guest or a leisure guest, because that changes quite a lot. So happy also eventually later on to share more data around it. That's
brilliant. Yeah. Thanks a million for that. So let's go to kind of an open forum. So if I could ask all of the speakers to, I guess, unmute their mics, and I have a couple of questions. And I suppose the first question that I would propose to, say, Will and Marvin, perhaps you might give your own sort of perspective on this. And I think if I kind of go back maybe about 10 years and I look at the penetration of, say, something like a channel manager in use and with hotels, I would think, say, if somebody asked me what's the penetration rate, I would say maybe 15% or less. And then if we fast forward to today, I would say, again, depending on kind of the hotel size and market, I mean, the penetration could be as high as 80% for channel managers. And I kind of see that, say, revenue management systems and CRM systems have a huge way to go yet in terms of get to that point. And I would think maybe that maybe the penetration, say, for yourselves would be in the kind of the 15% or less category. And I know, let's say, from our own clients that are using a revenue management system or a CRM system, that they do genuinely get some genuine good value adds out of using the systems. So is it just, what are the blockers, and is it just a question of time before we see the penetration of these systems in use on a broader level? Maybe Will, you might like to go first.
Yeah, I'll go first. I think we've come 2 steps. The first step was legacy platforms, built on older technology. There have been hotel CRM systems around for sort of 20 years. A lot of those are finding it harder now to keep up with the fast pace of technology. As we know, being hosted on Amazon Web Services, technology can develop very, very, very quickly. If you look at Facebook or Netflix or Uber or or all these tech sites, they're all in the cloud using most of them AWS. What that means is that the tech develops very fast. So then what you have is sort of the market demand has been going up like this, and the tech has been developing slowly. But in the last sort of 5 years, the advancement of the cloud capabilities means that the technology is really, really coming on fast and meeting that demand. And what we're seeing is that we're starting to overtake demand as well. We're able to sort of say, hey, we've developed this part, we've developed a loyalty program within the platform, or we've got this within the platform that hoteliers were not even sort of expecting or demanding, but it's now overtaken that demand. So I think on the whole, looking at the market, especially UK and Ireland, the market has adopted this technology quickly. And what you see then is that it's a case of just making sure the systems get better. If you took an audit of the top hotels, say 5-star downwards, you probably see a similar pattern to CRM usage downwards.
Thank you. And Marvin?
I think it's a great question, because it's a question that we ask ourselves, or that we try to answer as well. I think there is just such an amount of options for hoteliers out there to improve their business. And that's something, I mean, Mattia, you showed Netflix earlier. I mean, that's a problem we all have. Sometimes we spend more time looking for a movie than actually watching the movie. And that's sort of how it is for many hotels, how it is with hotel tech. There are so many options, and then you don't decide to do anything. And that's why I start my presentations with Lewis's quote, because it's really about just doing something. Anything you can dive into will help. And ultimately, all those things should be ones that make your business better, that make you money, and that allow you to do a better job with what is actually your job. Your job is making people happy that come to your place. Your job should not be spending 8 hours a day behind the laptop trying to understand the data that's displayed in front of you. That's not your job. Your job is making people happy, and technology should always enable you to do better in this job. And I think we're on a good track. We as technology companies have to do a better job of making it easy for everyone to use everything. And the hoteliers need to do a better job to just do things, start something, make experiences, and develop from that point.
Yeah, very good.
I would just add on to that. And I agree with you. The technology is here to help hotels have do an easier job. But I would argue that you have to start with the data first. You have to understand your guests, and you have to collect it, but it has to be clean data. And then that's the starting point, because everything else you build on top of that will work better if the data is cleaner, is merged, is deduped, etc. So yeah. That's what I'd add to that.
Okay, that kind of leads me on to, I suppose, my next question. And again, it's around the data side of things. And I just know from my own experience in chatting with hoteliers over the years, one of the biggest challenges that they face is where lies in data. That data is sitting in different repositories in the hotel, and it might be in the PMS, it might be in the CRM system, it might be in the accounting system, or wherever, say. And they're struggling trying to get all of this into one system. I mean, is there a quick fix solution or a tip that you would suggest or advise that they could? If you do this will put you on the right path to get all your data into one location?
For me, I mean, the CRM is designed to be the unifying place of data. So it really, unless you want to go down the manual route of pulling lists of all data sheets and trying to merge that, which will be more work than the value, you would need to go down the route of having actual integrations, which are going to be there, for the future as well. Start automating the process of bringing data in and merging it. having it in a CRM platform.
Yeah.
I think that's when you get real revenue change. You know, if you start, you can try and there's many different areas that you can focus on revenue, but real sustainable growth comes from having a sustainable business model, which is controlling and owning your guest data and not having somebody else own that guest data.
Yeah, a very good point. Yeah.
If I can add something on this, William, I think CRM definitely is where everything should come down. Ultimately, the other source of truth is always the PMS. And I think what is important for hotels in general is to make sure that all technology communicates to each other. The more two ways you have available, the better. We are still, as softwares, and I'm including ourselves, on the way to get there. But whenever you choose your technological stack, just make sure everything communicates with each other. The PMS, you'll have everything about reservation, which instead, when you talk about the CRM, then the guest profile will be there. And that's your single source of truth about the guests that you're welcoming. And I use this to kind of answer also Sharon, which is asking us the security implication of using multiple tech stack provider. I think if you have everything well connected, you shouldn't come across any implication. And looking at the latest, let's say, low compliancy requirements, it's very important to remember that the hotel is the data controller at the end of the day. So the data are always belonging to the hotel. All these technologies, also these technology you have seen today, are actually data processors. So you will not be losing control over data or see any breach, because we will process data on your behalf. And that's a bit what's the situation as of today in terms of security of the data.
Yeah, good answer. Thank you, Matteo. I have a question then for Helena and Tony, and it's all around this ongoing debate in terms of direct and OTA, and I suppose what we've seen this year, how COVID has turned our world upside down, and I suppose the big news story this year is all about the shift to direct. And is this a short-term shift, or is it something that's here to stay? Has the balance of power shifted, or is it just a once-off change this year? Helena,
if I can start off.
Tony, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, I would say there's going to be a definite sort of increase. I mean, even pre-COVID, like there was a question there about top channels in Ireland. Like, I mean, the number 2 channel delivering reservations in Ireland is direct booking. So it's booking.com and then it's booking engines. And that was pre-COVID, and it's only increased since. I think less about where people are booking, but more, I think people are going to be doing more and more domestic travel. So I think that's going to retain that strong direct booking behavior. I would imagine it's not going to stay quite as high as it is, because depending where you're based, like if you're in Ireland, you want some sunshine. So we are going to travel internationally where we can. And the great thing about direct booking is you do it where you're familiar. So you're going to be looking, if you know the property already, or if you're a returning guest or whatever. So I think, I mean, if there is a good strategy for returning guests as well through the direct booking, for international guests, you can do it as well. But for your domestic, I mean, I think direct needs to be number 1 and stay there.
I'd agree with Tony on that one. And I think it's really important that habits have changed. And I suppose not just with bookings, in general, loads of our habits have changed with COVID. But for this example is people are more used to looking direct, and will still look for that COVID safety information. That'll be there for a few years to come still. And people will look for that direct. And once we make sure that the sites are well managed and have all the information and have an easy booking process, it'll keep people on the site to continue making through that booking. So it's definitely a silver lining in all of this awfulness in 2020, but we need to work really hard to continue keep people direct and continue that shift. It won't be as high as it is at the moment and with COVID when we get into 2021, 2022, but I think it will have shifted and will be better than it was previously.
Okay, thanks a million, Helena. I have a question for each of you, and I suppose if you answer in turn, and it's really just looking ahead to 2021. Certainly this year has been a challenging year, because of COVID. I think 21 will equally be challenging, but in different ways, and many of which have yet are still unknown for us. I mean, COVID is going to be around certainly for the first half of 21, I think. Is there one key message that you would have for hoteliers, just based on your own perspective, say in terms of your view of the world, but also say from your technology side of things? Is there one tip or one nugget that you would like to impart with the hoteliers this morning? And perhaps Marvin, if you want to start first.
Yeah, I mean, the topic or the name of this event is Accelerate. And that's sort of really the key point. If you want to hit top speed, you need to have some time to accelerate. Use this time now to accelerate, to reconsider your tech stack, to add new things, and then you will be able to hit top speed when things is back to normal. And that's really the main message, in my opinion, that you should take from this.
Okay, thanks a million, Marvin. Tony?
Yeah, I mean, just I feel like I'm on repeat here, but I mean, the key thing for me will be looking at, plan ahead. It's very easy to get focused on the now and what situation we're in at the moment, but think about what kind of stage you're in and what is going to be the next step and how what you need to do in order to begin preparing for that. So it's very similar to Marvin, is, use the time now to think. But I also, Lewis's little motto, I'm going to take that as well. I like the idea of starting something is key. Like, I mean, because I mean that in life, we can think about lots of things, but if we don't start something, it's good. So that's my key takeaway anyway.
Yeah,
sure.
Good point. I appreciate that. Thank you, Tony. And Mattia?
Well, I would suggest to start looking into two things. It's a great opportunity to look back at your product, what you haven't been improving in the past. It's a good moment to do it now. So really look at your product. And secondly, look at the customer journey. It starts with booking, it goes to pre-stay, in-stay, post-stay, and how you speak to that customer along the year. So if you find how different technology and touch points can work together towards making that customer journey seamless and unforgettable, that's really what you want to be able to do next year. And once you've looked at a customer journey and the product, really get away from the fear that has a bit paralyzed all of us in the last few months, me first, and start looking at next year with a bit of hope and starting to take some actions, basically.
Thank you. And Will?
I tell you, answered that for me then. He's right. The guest journey is absolutely critical. Make sure that you've got the right guest journey for the right guest. You've got a guest journey for your corporate, your leisure, your local, whatever type of guests you have, whether you're opening now, whether you're opening in 2021, make sure those guest journeys are ready, automated, and it starts with your data. So actually the first point would be sort your data out, clean it up, merge all the different profiles. You need to know who is who and how many times they've stayed and what their preferences are, then begin to create that guest journey for them.
Okay, thank you. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. Helena, you might, there's a question in from Davina, which you might be the best place to answer. So the question is, for hotels who have had to reduce rates in 2020, what would be the recommendation to begin increasing the RevPAR in 21-22?
That's a good question. And I will need my crystal ball to help answer that one. I suppose every revenue manager wants a crystal ball, I'll say that. I suppose it'll depend on when we start to see, I suppose, when the vaccine is ready and people can travel better. If we keep going in and out of lockdowns, that will obviously hurt RevPAR. But I suppose it's having confidence in your product and making sure that, keeping an eye on your competitors' rates, but having the confidence that what you're offering is good for the guest, ensuring your health and safety processes and policies are great, and that will help drive bookings to your hotel. But I suppose it's data that's going to give you a lot of information on this as well. See, last year's data isn't a whole lot of use to us now, but keeping a trend, an eye on what's going on at the time, what bookings are coming in, what rate plans are booking, what room types are booking, an eye on your competitors' rates. And obviously you work with partners like us who can give you overview information as to what similar properties are doing as well. And that'll give you the confidence, I suppose, just to know when to start increasing rates. But ask Santa for a crystal ball, I think, as well.
Okay, yeah, I think we need a crystal ball for next year. So on that note, I'd like to wrap up the session this morning and to thank our speakers for their time. I mean, the presentations were excellent. We will definitely be sharing the slide deck to everyone afterwards. plus a condensed version of the recordings. And just to thank everybody who took the time out to attend this morning. I really appreciate it. I hope you learned something. I think there's been lots of really good advice from the Q&A, but also from the presentations. So again, thank you for your time, and thank you to our speakers. Have a great day now, guys. Everybody be good.